Good morning, Mr. Noche. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Are we ready?
We are ready to start, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, before we start with with the witness for today, can we just do some housekeeping exercise? In the bundle, Bosasa bundle 1, Chair, there was an issue on Monday about the transcript, which starts on page 48 of that bundle, which had a very small font up to page 56. I'm instructed by the record keepers that it has been now they've put copies with a bigger font, which is, instead of having pages printed in small font, there are bigger fonts. They say after page 56, Chair will find that there are pages starting with a blue sticker on the page.
You said page 48.
It starts from the one that starts from the old one will be starting from page 48 to page 56, and then the replacements will start after page 56.
Is it the same number of pages, or is it more pages?
No, it's more pages. Because as you would see that what was in these pages were about 4 pages in each page.
Okay, I think that's fine. What should be done is that it should be paginated, because it's not paginated at the moment. And there are 2 ways of doing it. The one way involves taking out the pages with a small font,
yes,
and replacing them with the ones with the right font, and then paginating those. Another way is to keep the pages with a small font with the pagination that they have, and then paginate these other ones with the right font as well, but paginate them in such a way that you don't interfere with the pagination of the next pages.
No,
but it seems to me that the best way is just to take out the wrong font, and then what you can do when you paginate the ones with the right font. So the ones with the right font would start from page 48, the first page. And then when you reach page 56, which is where the last page of the small font, then you could say for pages that come after page 56, 56.1, 56.1, 0.2, 0.3. Yes. So you don't interfere with the existing pages. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Chair, can I suggest this? That the Secretariat will deal with the paging. Fortunately, this bundle will also feature in tomorrow's hearings. Before we start tomorrow's hearings, and I will inform you what there has been done, and then it will be corrected.
Are you going to be referring to these pages today?
No, I will not.
You won't? Oh, no. Okay. So the pagination they can do then.
Yes.
All right.
Chair, the witness for today is also in respect of the Bosasa inquiry, and the witness is Mrs. Gina Pieters, and she is the former secretary of Mr. Angelo Agrizzi, who has testified. Her testimony will be about the interaction she had in form of arranging for presence for Mrs. Sandy Thomas and Mrs. Nomvula. Her evidence, her affidavit is on page, is in Exhibit 29, and it starts from page 71 of the exhibit, and then with attachments, and it will go to page 17. She'll testify about her arranging for the hampers and also arranging for the get well cards for Mrs. Sandy Thomas. Witness is Mrs. Gina Pieters. She's here to testify.
Yes, please administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Gina Pieters?
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No,
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
You may be seated, Ms. Pieters.
Mrs. Pieters, although I'm asking you questions, you are talking to the chairperson, so when you answer, please look at him. And then if you can raise your voice so that we can hear you.
Sure. Good morning.
Mrs. Pieters.
Good morning, Ms. Pieters.
Just there's a file in front of you. That file is got statements. Can you look at what is number 29?
On a lighter note, Mr. Noche, this is one witness who appears quite happy to be here.
From the beginning, I could say she is very, very happy.
Yes. Thank you for coming to testify.
Also, she was telling me she's from Randfontein.
Oh.
The whole of Randfontein, as we speak, is on standstill. Shops have closed to watch her testifying.
Yes.
Mrs. Pieters, can I ask you to turn to page 72 of that? And then keep your finger there on page 72, and then go to.
You have told her you are referring to the black numbers for page.
Yes.
Okay.
And then go to page 78. There's a signature there on that page above the words Gina Pieters. Whose signature is that?
It's mine.
And you have looked at this document. Do you confirm that this is your affidavit?
Yes, I do.
Chair, can the affidavit of the witness be admitted as Exhibit T29 in bundle Bosasa 01?
The affidavit of Ms. Gina Pieters, appearing at page 72, who will be admitted and marked as Exhibit T29.
Mrs. Pieters, is it correct that you were the former professional assistant of Mr. Agrizzi, who has testified before this commission?
I was, yes.
What were your duties when you were working for Mr. Agrizzi?
Well, everything that a PA does, except take the children to school. That was not in my duties. And then I also coordinated the bid office, the tenders. We submitted tenders.
Now, in your affidavit, you have testified about preparing birthday hampers. Can you tell the commission about that?
Before that, do you confirm that, or rather, from when to when were you Mr. Agrizzi's PA?
From May 2004 until February 2017.
Okay, all right, thank you. Continue, Mr. Noche.
And in your affidavit, you deposed to the fact that you had prepared some birthday hampers. Can you tell the commission about that?
Yes, at some point in my tenure to Mr. Agrizzi, I was requested to send hampers to Ms. Nomvula Mokonyane and her PA, Sandy Thomas. I can, however, not recall the exact date, but I do have evidence that it was from 2010, definitely. It could have been before that as well, but I cannot locate any records to confirm that, unfortunately.
How did you interact? Did you interact directly with Mrs. Thomas or Mrs. Mokonyan?
Yes, I was. Mr. Agrizzi would ask me to send hampers, and get hold of Sandy Thomas to get hold of her physical address. I had to ask Mrs. Thomas where she would prefer the hampers to be sent to. And if I can recall correctly, she asked me not to send it to the office and gave me a home address. Then that was one occasion, and then a few months later, maybe a year later, I was asked to send hampers again. Thereafter, I saved the detail. When something became a regular occurrence, I would save the details on my phone with an address and the telephone number so that it's easier to contact the person.
Now, on page 73 of your affidavit of the record, in paragraph 6, you refer to there's an email that you sent. Can you tell the Commission about that email?
Yes, that was 1 year when I was late in sending the hamper. Let me just check.
Just to help, is it correct that the email appears on page 83?
That's correct. That is the one in the occasion where I had forgotten and I ordered the hampers late. It was after the birthdays.
Just tell me first who the email came from, to whom it was addressed, on what date it was, and the time, and then read the email and then elaborate on it if you would like to.
Sure. The email was from me to our procurement head, Dudu Dube, her assistant, Innocentia Mariah, and the other procurement head, Arthur Hand, where I asked them to please assist with the two ladies' hampers to the value of 1,500 each. One was addressed to Minister Nomvula and the other one to Sandy Thomas. And then I stated what they needed to write in the cards. Would you like me to read that?
Read that, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, read that.
The one to Minister Nomvula was, happy birthday, may the Lord bless you always, regards Gavin. And the one to Sandy Thomas, happy belated birthday, may the Lord bless you always, regards Angelo.
Now
and then read the rest of the email there.
And then I wrote, please do not make any reference to Bosasa. Contact number for both parcels is Sandy Thomas.
Yeah, you don't have to read the cell number.
Yes.
And then the last sentence.
And then I asked, if they can deliver this afternoon still, it will be great. Otherwise, not later than close of business tomorrow, please.
Okay, all right. Continue, Mr. Notch.
Now, let's just go to at the top of the email. You say it's to Dube. Who was Dube?
Dudu Dube was the procurement, head of department for procurement.
We're in Bosasa.
Yes.
And then Innocentia Mariah.
She was the assistant.
And then Arthur Hand.
He was also head of the department.
So all these people were within Bosasa.
Yes.
I see. Now, then you say in the email, there's a reference when you're reading the message on the card. It says, happy birthday, may the Lord bless you always, regards Gavin. Who is Gavin?
That is Mr. Gavin Watson.
And then the one for Mrs. Thomas says, happy belated birthday, may the Lord bless you always, regards Angelo. Who's Angelo?
That is Angelo Agrizzi.
Now at the bottom there is in capital letters, please do not make any reference to Bosasa. Why is that?
That is...
And whose idea was it?
Mr. Agrizzi used to ask me to do that when things were confidential and there was not to be any links made to Bosasa, preferably. So that is why that he would have asked me to do that, and that is why I put it there in bold capitals, so that it could not implicate them, link them in an untoward manner to Bosasa.
So it was his, Mr. Agrizzi's instruction that you should make sure that when they do the cards, they don't make any reference to Bosasa.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Now I see at the top I always struggle to read emails because they start with the latest and
Yes.
and with the earlier one and then the latest. The latest there is from Innocentia Marai at 11:14. She sends this to Kobela Poshoko. Who's Kobela?
Kobela was also a stationary administrator in the procurement department.
And this says, hi Kobelo, for your attention. So she was referring your email to Kobelo.
Correct?
Yes. Now, there was an issue as to whether these were received. Mrs. Thomas says she couldn't remember whether they were delivered at her home. Did you receive any report that this could not be delivered?
No, I did not.
Now, when there's a problem about a request like this, problems about delivery or couldn't be delivered, do you get a report back from the people you had sent?
Yes, and I'd like to add that the supplier was very reliable. At times when they could not locate the recipient, they would contact me. There was also weekend deliveries from time to time that the recipient was not available that they reported to me.
Now, there's also in your affidavit about a hamper that was sent to Mrs. Thomas, and the email is on page 85 of the record. Can you tell
Of bundle Bosasa 01.
Oh, of the
Bosasa
bundle.
bundle 01.
Bosasa Bundle 01,
Yeah.
page 85. The email, where was it from?
It's from myself.
Can you tell the commission about that email? How did it come about that you sent such an email?
Please read it first, and then you can tell me more about it. Who it was to, who it was from, what date it was, what time, and read the content, and then tell me how it came about.
The email was from myself on the 28th of November at 10:31. It was to Dudu Dube and Arthur Hand, and I CC'd Jacques van Sale. The email read, "Good day, Arthur, Dudu and Arthur. Trust you are well. In Innocentia's absence, I am not sure who to contact, so sorry for bugging you. Could you please kindly arrange for a ladies' hamper of 700 Rand to be delivered to Ms. Sandy Thomas, and the address is listed, and her telephone number. Please treat as VIP." The card was to read, "Get well soon card. Dear Sandy, wishing you a speedy recovery and everything of the best. God bless, Angelo Agrizzi. If they can deliver today, it will be great. Otherwise, tomorrow morning, please. Thank you."
How did it come about that you sent that email?
Mr. Agrizzi called me and he said to me, "Sandy's she's in hospital. Please get hold of her and send her a parcel."
Okay.
And did you have any report that this could not be delivered, or
No,
there was a problem about it?
no.
Now, there's also an email which is attached again to Bosasa Bundle 1, page 88. Can you read that email and then explain to the commission how did it come about that you sent that email?
Okay, the email is also again from myself to Innocentia and Magdal Wilson. On Thursday, 23 September 2010 at 11:42, I wrote, "Dear Innocentia, can you please arrange for the attached order for delivery on Saturday? Please note that the words on the card should be exactly as I have stated on the card. Do not address it from Bosasa management, only Angelo. Thank you."
Now you refer there to an attached order. Look at Bosasa Bundle 1, page 87. There's something there called purchase order. What is that?
That is an official purchase order which we had to complete, and when we were ordering stuff so that it could be attached to the invoice in order that payments could be processed.
And I see there's a delivery address. Whose address is that?
Mrs. Sandy Thomas.
And then in the middle on the purchase order details, what is written there? Can you read it for the record?
I wrote one lady's hamper containing primarily chocolates and then also some nuts, dried fruit, etc., and a thank you card. And inverted commas, I wrote, "Dear Sandy, your thoughtfulness is most appreciated. God bless, Angelo."
And who's Angelo you are referring to?
Angelo Agrizzi.
I see in your email on page 88 that you again state what we saw in the other email where you say, do not address it for Bosasa management, only Agrizzi.
That's correct.
Was it again to follow instructions that you shouldn't mention the name of Bosasa?
That is correct.
Now,
Did you have an understanding of why there seemed to have been an emphasis on the part of Mr. Agrizzi that when you sent these cards, there should be no reference to Bosasa?
Yes, my understanding was that it was not to compromise the individuals being in the positions that they were
Yes.
of high profile.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
now these hampers, birthday hampers, were this one occasion or did it happen almost every year?
Yes, it was a common occurrence because I had saved it on my cell phone and I had set reminders in my calendar to do it every year so that I would get a reminder and then automatically send the order through to the procurement department.
But you think you started sending these hampers and cards from around 2010,
That is correct.
not before?
It
or
is
maybe
possible.
1 year before, but
Yes,
not many years before.
It is possible that I sent it before, I
Can't
can't
remember. Yes.
Yes, I can't substantiate that at this stage.
Yes. Now, from the time, from 2010 or whatever the time is when you started, up to the time that Mr. Agrizzi left, or you left, I don't know who left first. Do you know whether you sent these every year to Ms. Mokonyane and to Ms. Thomas, or there may have been some years when you didn't send?
Yes, there may have been some years where I didn't send or forget,
Yes.
as in the instance with 2015,
Yes.
when Mr. Agrizzi contacted me and reminded me that I forgot.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
These hampers and these presents, who paid for this?
Sorry?
Who paid for these hampers and presents?
Bosasa did.
Now, I see there was an incident where you say you neglected to send the hampers to, you forgot to send hampers to Mrs. Thomas. Can you tell the commission about that?
Yes, it was towards, well, being the end of the month, I was rather busy at that stage with month-end reports, etc., and that is how it came about that I had forgotten, and Mr. Agrizzi reminded me.
And then you send the hamper.
Correct.
Chair, that is the evidence of the witness. And
No, thanks. On page 87, Ms. Pieters, the card that was to be sent to Ms. Thomas was to read, "Dear Sandy, your thoughtfulness is most appreciated. God bless, Angelo." Now, I know that, or maybe I shouldn't say I know. Who chose those words? Was it Mr. Agrizzi or yourself?
Mr. Agrizzi.
Do you by any chance know what the context was relating to him wanting to say to Ms. Thomas, your thoughtfulness is most appreciated? Do you understand if there had been some recent interaction between them in terms of which Mr. Agrizzi thought Ms. Thomas was somebody who was very thoughtful and so on? Do you happen to know that, or is that something you don't know?
He didn't tell me. It's
Yes.
obvious from the words that there was something done, but I
Something that
don't
had
know
happened,
what.
yeah. Okay, now that's all right. Now, in terms of interactions between Ms. Thomas and Mr. Agrizzi, do you know whether there was a lot of interaction in terms of telephone calls to each other at work? I'm not talking about cell phones, but at work, using landline. Did they interact regularly, or as far as you know, or not?
A lot of people phone Mr. Agrizzi directly on his phone.
But directly on his
Yes,
cell phone?
on his cell
Oh,
phone.
yes.
So not many calls came through on the office line.
On the landline,
Yes. So I
okay.
can't say how much.
Yes.
But I know he was inundated with calls from a lot of people.
Yeah, okay, all right. Would that apply also to any calls that may have happened between Mr. Agrizzi and Ms. Mokonyane? In other words, you don't know, because if there were any, they would have been to his cell phone and not the landline?
Yes, they would have been to his cell phone.
Yes. Does that also apply in terms of any interactions, or you wouldn't know any interactions between Ms. Thomas and Mr. Gavin Watson and Ms. Mokonyane and Mr. Gavin Watson? You would not know about those?
No, I would not know.
Yes. Okay. Do you know anything about any groceries that Bosasa may have bought and caused to be delivered to Ms. Mokonyane's house? Do you know anything about that Mr. Agrizzi may have been involved in?
No, that he would have dealt with Alistair Esau and the kitchen staff
Yes,
directly.
you would not have been involved
No,
in
I
that, so you don't know anything about those.
I heard about things like that. There
Yes,
was a lot
but-
of talk in the street, yes. But
Yes, but you never got involved.
it's possible that I did get documents to sign. A lot of things came to me to print, and I had
Yes,
to give it
yes.
to Mr. Agrizzi to sign and then take it to the accounts department.
Yeah,
There was a lot. I did not take a
Yes.
mental note of everything.
Yes.
There was stuff that, yes, I had to have signed and taken.
yes, yes. So if you were involved in any way, it would have been a very limited involvement. You would not have been too involved in those things.
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right. Anything arising?
No, nothing, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pieters, for coming to give evidence. You are now excused.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Chair, that is the witness from my side.
Yes, okay, no,
And
that's fine.
otherwise, we.
I will adjourn before we start with the next witness for the day.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn. Good morning, Ms. Tabashe. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chairman.
It's got anything to do with the positioning.
Which is the position?
Yes,
Thank you, Chairman.
that's better.
Chairman, this morning's session deals with the evidence of Ms Seipati Dhlamini. She is the former CFO, Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development in the Free State. She is here to give evidence on the Freire Integrated Dairy Project. I don't know if you want me to speak louder, Chairman, or if I'm audible enough.
Yeah, no, I can hear you. Yeah.
Ms. Dhlamini is ready to take the oath, Chairman. After that, I'll deal with the bundles that we have.
Yes. Okay, please administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Seipati Sylvia Dhlamini.
Do you have any objections to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence will give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, you may proceed.
Chairman, Ms. Dhlamini has made two statements. The first statement is contained in a new bundle that we have prepared for you overnight, Chairman, which we have labeled Estina Bundle 01. And in Estina Bundle 01, you have Exhibit HH16, for H for happy. HH16, which contains the original affidavit submitted by Ms. Dhlamini. We ask that be admitted to the record as soon as she has confirmed the contents and that she deposed to it. The second exhibit, Chairman, is Exhibit HH16.1, which consists of the supplementary affidavit that we received yesterday with its annexures. The supplementary affidavit, because the annexures are rather voluminous, is split into two files, Chairman. So as and when it becomes necessary, I will indicate when we are dealing with Estina Bundle 01, which is the first file, which has both the original affidavit and the supplementary affidavit. And then I will also indicate when we are dealing with Estina Bundle 02, which really just has the remainder of the annexures to the supplementary affidavit. Ms. Dhlamini, I hope that I will be able to guide you through these documents. And if you don't understand where I'm taking you to, please, you'll indicate. Chairman, the other thing I would like to point out to you that in terms of the new numbering that has been introduced into the Commission's records, we have numbering on the left-hand side of Estina Bundle 01 and 02, which we trust aligns with the new system. So in Estina Bundle 01, the numbering on the black numbering runs from 01 through to to page 415, Chairman. And then when we get to Exhibit HH 16.1's annexures, which will be in Estina Bundle 02, again, that numbering, Chairman, will have the black numbering and the red numbering, but we'll try and stay with the black numbering. And that starts again from 01 through to the end. So each file has its own numbering, Chairman, but as we go along, I will indicate what we're using. I prefer to stay with the black numbering, Chair.
Yeah, I think let's do that.
It seems to make a little more sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm afraid the new area, I'm not used to this, it's rather crowded.
Yes.
So you'll bear with me, Chairman, as I was used to the other building
Yes, no,
where we
that's
had
all
lots
right.
of space to move around.
Yes.
Ms. Dhlamini, can you please pick up Exhibit HH 16, which is your first affidavit? You'll find it in Estina Bundle 01. I know that there are very many files behind you because there are reference files and related files, but I will take you through what we need, so don't worry too much about the number of files we have there. Chairman, before I forget, there are also our reference bundles that we have included a couple of additional documents to. I simply ask that the reference bundles as currently constituted be accepted and be admitted to the record.
Are those reference bundles that weren't admitted previously?
They were, Chairman.
Yes.
We have simply, in fact, we have simply added one or two documents relating to the functions of a CFO to the last bundle.
Yeah. Well, if they were admitted, they would remain admitted. If there are new documents that were not referred to, were not therefore part of what was admitted, those may have to be admitted separately and either be included in those bundles or put in separately, but you can apply your mind during the break and so on.
I shall do that, Chairman.
Yeah.
The one new bundle that you do have is a bundle we thought we should prepare just out of an abundance of caution, and we're calling it a transcripts bundle. There's certain evidence that was led that refers to Ms. Dhlamini, so we've tried to extract just excerpts from those particular transcripts because they are rather voluminous.
Yeah.
We've put them in their own little file, which we are calling a transcripts, extracts file, just for your ease of reference, and so we didn't have to carry all our transcripts here. So that will be a completely new file that we think is likely to be useful both today and as you proceed to deal with the Estina stream.
Yes, so that one, we might just have it as a reference bundle or as a bundle, but the idea might not be to admit the transcripts, I guess. It's just that it should be available for questioning and so on.
That's correct, Chairman.
Yeah, so we might just place on record that there is such a file. Yeah.
Thank you. So I place on record that we do have a file with transcripts from various witnesses that we have extracted and placed in that file so that we can show Ms. Dhlamini where we are getting the propositions we are putting to her from.
Do you have a name for it, like bundle what, or reference file what, or file what?
Chairman, it has been labeled Exhibit HH, transcript extracts. HH is the Vrede Dairy Farm.
Yes.
All the HH files are Vrede Dairy Farm.
Yes. Should we call it bundle HH, or what do you think? Because I say we don't intend that the contents be admitted as exhibits, just for convenience. What do you-
I'm very happy with that, Chairman.
Yeah, let's call it just bundle,
Bundle
HH.
HH, transcripts.
Transcripts, extracts.
Extract.
Yeah. Yes, okay, all right.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Dhlamini, I'm back with you, and I really just want you to confirm that both affidavits that you've submitted are yours, that you deposed to them, when you deposed to them, etc. So I'll take you through this very slowly. If you turn to page, and we're using the black numbers on the left-hand side, ma'am. So if you page to page 3, I won't call it 003, I'll just call it, use the last number. So page 3, it is the first page of your affidavit that you submitted to the commission, which is dated the 17th of December. Is that your name that's reflected on that first page, page 3?
Yes, Chairperson.
Is this your affidavit, ma'am?
Yes, Chairperson.
You are familiar with the contents thereof?
Yes, Chairperson.
If you look at page 35 of that document, Ms. Dhlamini, there is a signature on that page. Is that your signature?
Yes, Chairperson, that's my signature.
And I note that the date that's written there just simply says the 17th day of December. Will you confirm that that would have been in 2019?
Yes, Chairperson, that would be 17th of December, 2019.
Thank you very much, ma'am. If we then look at the second statement that you submitted yesterday, that one you will find on page 42 of the same bundle. Again, that is your name on the page, on page 42. The black numbers.
Yes, Chairperson, that's my name.
If you then go to page 56,
Yes, Chairperson.
do you confirm that that is your signature?
Yes, Chairperson, that's my signature.
Do you confirm that you deposed to this and you're familiar with the contents of this affidavit?
Yes, Chair.
And that you included these annexures and you're familiar with the annexures that you've annexed here to?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much, ma'am. If I can just give you a short roadmap.
Do you want me to admit them?
If you would please, Chairman, my apologies. If you would admit exhibit.
The first one you want to be admitted and marked as exhibit what? The one at page 3, starting at page 3?
It's marked HH16, Chairman.
The affidavit of Ms Seipati Dhlamini appearing at page 3, or starting at page 3 of Estina bundle 01, is admitted and will be marked as exhibit HH16. And then the second one?
And then the second one is HH16.1, Chairman. And that's the one that starts at page 42.
The affidavit of Ms Seipati Dhlamini, starting at page 42 of Estina bundle 01, is admitted and will be marked as Exhibit HH 16.1.
Thank you, Chairman.
There is this other one that is separate. I don't want to deal with it now in terms of its admission, or will that come later?
Chairman, that is the original one that we got a
It was
a while
admitted.
ago. That's the one we've admitted as HH16.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay. Or is that this?
So we simply put it in a bigger file, Chairman.
Oh,
But
it just
because you
looks-
had the original one, we just put it there in case you had
Oh, it looks
made
thin. It
markings or
looked- it-
questions.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine. It looked thinner, but okay.
It
all
was,
right.
we were very happy with it until we got the second one. Thank you,
Okay,
Chairman.
all right.
Ms. Dhlamini, just to give you a sense, and also the Chairman a sense of what we'll be dealing with today. You were the CFO, and we are really going to try and focus on your role as the CFO, your responsibilities as the CFO, and all relevant prescripts that you would have been aware of as the CFO. Other witnesses have come to give evidence on a range of matters relating to the dairy project. We are really going to endeavor to try and keep our focus in relation to your evidence on your role as you supported the head of department, Mr. Tabete. Are you happy with that?
I'm happy, Chair.
Can we start by finding out what your current occupation is?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'm currently working at the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in the Free State Province. The position I hold is of a Deputy Director General, which the position's responsibility in the main is to provide support and intervention to the municipalities. And currently, I am acting as the CFO. I've been seconded to Kopanun local municipality as the acting CFO.
Thank you. When did you actually join the Free State government? I think it was in 2007. Please assist us and just explain.
Yes, Chair, I joined the Free State government December 2007.
And what position did you hold there?
When I joined the Free State government, I joined it as the Chief Financial Officer, the CFO, for the Department of, then was Local Government and Housing.
Just pull the mic a little closer to you.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
okay.
sorry, Chair.
All right.
And who was the MEC of Housing and Local Government when you were there?
When I joined in 2007, the MEC was Mr. Mapireka.
And he was followed by?
Sorry, Chair.
And after him? While you were still there?
Can you repeat, Chair?
I ask only because I thought that Mr. Zwane was MEC of that department at the time that you were there.
Oh,
If I'm wrong, just correct me and give us the facts.
oh, okay, Chair. As I stated, in 2007, when I joined the department, the MEC was Mr. Mafirika. Mr. Zwane joined the department in 2009 after the election. When the new government came in, then Tate Mafirika did not come back, but the MEC then became Mr. Zwane. That was in 2009.
So you were serving in that department as the CFO,
I was serving in that department, Chair, as the CFO.
and Mr. Zwane was the MEC of that department.
Mr. Zwane was indeed the MEC for that department.
Thank you. I simply mention it because I know we'll come across Mr. Zwane again in a few minutes' time. So it's common cause that you were also the CFO of the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Yes, Chair.
And that is where, again, Mr. Zwane would have come within your orbit. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Zwane then came, also found me in the Department of Agriculture in 2011. I joined the I was transferred from the Department of Local Government, and by the time I get transferred, it was now the Department of Local Governance and Traditional Affairs and the Department of Human Settlement. Then I was transferred December 2010 to Agriculture. In 2011, Mr. Zwane was also appointed the MEC for that department, Agriculture and Rural Development.
So you arrived at agriculture before Mr. Zwane arrived there?
I arrived before Mr. Zwane arrived.
Thank you. Very briefly, can you just tell the chairman what your qualifications are? You're a CFO. What are the qualifications that you hold?
I qualified in a BCom degree. My major subjects are accounting and management accounting. I further studied but could not complete with the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, which is in the UK. I also studied at the Queen's University in Canada, and I did a course which is equivalent to Masters in Investment Appraiser. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So you are very qualified, quite frankly.
Yes, in terms of the requirement of the post of Chief Financial Officer, I'm properly qualified.
And you have vast experience because of your service in this particular role.
Yes, I have vast experience in the service because I joined the government in 1996 and worked for the Provincial Treasury of Free State. In 2007, I became the CFO in the Northern Cape Department of Treasury, and I moved then from the same year. I stayed only from March up to December. December, I joined the Free State government in local government and housing as the CFO. So my role as the CFO started in 2007.
So one can safely say that when it comes to understanding the legal framework that regulates and governs anything to do with procurement, you would know everything you need to know about that.
Yes, Chair.
Can I just ask you one question, just as an aside, really? The Premier of the Free State in the period that we are really interested in, which is 2011 to 2015, or 2010 to 2015, was Mr. Magashule.
Yes, it was Mr. Magashule.
Did you work in his office at any point in time?
No, Chair.
Thank you. You were an executive within the management committee of DARD, DARD being the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Yes, I served as a CFO. I served in the executive management of that department.
And I just want to make it clear for the record that where we are at some point going to refer to EXCO, that reference will really be to the Provincial Legislature Executive Committee. These are two totally different structures.
Yes, it's a total different structure, Chair, but I'm not sure if, Chair, you want to refer to EXCO as for the legislature or EXCO as the structure that is consisted of the Premier and the MECs, all the MECs, because that is then different from the legislature.
For our purposes, and just for clarity, Ms. Dhlamini, we are really referring to the first, where it's the provincial legislature, because we're going to be talking about the resolution that Cabinet signed, the EXCO resolution that dealt with FRIEDA, and that really is our interest in making sure that on record there's no confusion between our reference to EXCO when we're talking about the provincial legislature headed by the Premier, and your executive management committee within the department, which would have been headed by Mr. Tabete as the head of department.
That's
I think,
understandable.
I think there may be confusion there. As I understand the position, unless you said one thing when in your mind you had something else in mind. There is the Executive Council of the province. The Executive Council of the province is led or chaired by the Premier, and the other members of that council are the MECs. Those are the only members of the Executive Council. So some people might call it EXCO, I don't know, but constitutionally, that's the Executive Council of the province. That's like the cabinet of the province. And then there is the provincial legislature. Now, I don't know whether the provincial legislature would have its own EXCO, but I doubt that it would involve the Premier or any MEC.
Chairman, in context, the relevance of this is related to the EXCO minute that authorized the implementation of the Vrede Dairy project. And that was a cabinet discussion.
That's the Executive Council.
So that would be the Executive Council of the province.
Yeah.
That's really all I was trying to clear up.
Also, when you refer to EXCO, that's the structure you are referring to.
That's what we will be referring
Okay.
to. So I just didn't want there to be confusion.
Yes,
Chairman.
no. That's important. So I know also when you say EXCO in this context, you are referring to the Provincial Executive Council.
And thank you for assisting in clearing up those two
Yes, okay.
structures.
That's
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'm really just probing your competency, your experience, etc. at this point, Ms. Dhlamini. You were also a member of the Chief Financial Officers Forum, which was convened and coordinated by the Provincial Accountant General. Is that not correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Now, this is a forum that would have facilitated the work that you did as CFOs, all of you as CFOs. Am I right?
That's correct.
And it also allowed you to ask and debate operational questions and issues that concerned you. You could debate them at this forum.
That's correct, Chair.
You were also able to have direct access at this forum to the Provincial Accountant General, especially where that person may have queried certain non-compliance by a department, for instance, your department.
That's correct, Chair.
Again, I'm just putting on record what we understand you to have been familiar with at the time. I am correct in saying you were not a member of the Provincial Treasury Committee, were you?
And you repeat, Chair?
You were not a member of the Provincial Treasury Committee, which would have been part of the Provincial Treasury.
I was not, Chair.
Would you be invited to meetings of the Provincial Treasury Committee?
Yes, you would be invited at some point, only when they deal with budget matters. When you are invited to come, and basically it would be the department that is invited to come and present the budget of the department to the committee. So I would go there as the CFO together with the HOD and other program managers in the department.
That's how I understand it.
Yes,
And the HOD would really lead the team, and your job was to advise on financial and budgetary matters that were supposed to be discussed at these meetings.
Yes, Chair.
Excellent. I'm sure you will agree with me when I say to you that the most important functions of a CFO, and I know you've dealt with some of this in your affidavits, but I really am just trying to have a broad overview of who you were professionally and what your competencies were. I'd like just to keep saying that. The most important functions as a CFO in a provincial department would include financial management, budget and expenditure control, rendering advice to management, especially to the HOD and of course to other managers, risk management, asset management, information systems management, and ensuring that there was full compliance with the financial legal prescripts, including compliance with the SCM policy document.
That's correct, Chair. However, risk management and information management system were not part of my responsibility. Risk management is a separate unit that's report to the HOD, and information systems report also, in our department, it was reporting under corporate services.
I'm comfortable with that. I just want to underscore the specific legislative prescripts or provisions that would have assisted you in discharging your functions. So we know that first, Section 217 of the Constitution, and we really are dealing largely with procurement matters because the Vrede Dairy project was about procurement largely for farmer support. So Section 217, you are happy, was really the grounding provision that you had to refer to.
I'm happy, Chair.
And that would then cascade down to the PFMA, which then would further cascade down to Treasury regulations and instruction notes.
That's correct, Chair.
And in fact, not only you, but every CFO was obliged to be familiar with all those provisions.
That's correct, Chair.
I want to focus for a minute on Section 38 of the PFMA, just for 1 minute, because I want us to have a common understanding that the entire Section 38 was applicable to the functions that you discharged. Am I correct?
If you look at the entire section, can I refer? Chair?
Please.
Because
Yes.
it confuses me, because sometimes it talks about Part 2 of the PFMA.
I have a slightly newer copy of the PFMA than you do. I hope that our provisions are the same. I have one in my reference bundles, but are you happy to use the one you are holding in your hand?
I think, Chair, they are still the same. It's just that they were not printed at the same printers.
Yes.
Let's proceed. So you've got Section 38(1), which runs from subsection 1, runs from A all the way down to N, and then you've got subsection 2, 38(2), which is particularly important in this particular investigation, because it says that an accounting officer may not commit a department, trading entity, or constitutional institution to any liability for which money has not been appropriated. You are comfortable that this applied to the work that you did? That was the question.
I'm comfortable, Chair, that it applies. However, there's other elements in this section that they may not necessarily not be my core responsibility. Like, you would realize there's an internal audit, which is a separate. There's also risk management, but in annexure it applies.
Yeah. And then the other important one I thought we should just agree on is that Section 44 and 45 of the PFMA would also have been relevant to the work that you did, because 44 allowed the accounting officer, that's Mr. Tabete as the HOD, to delegate certain functions to you. So the financial functions would be delegated to you. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm fine with that, Chair.
And then section 45 actually tells you what your responsibilities would have been, responsibilities of officials who have been delegated certain responsibilities. You are comfortable with that?
Basically, Section 45, Chairperson, talks to responsibilities of other officials. And in this case, yes, I would also fall under other officials. I will explain that matter when we deal with the budget.
That's fine. Because what will be of particular importance when you get there, and I'm happy we'll deal with that later, would be 45B, which says that those officials or that particular official is responsible for the effective, efficient, economical, and transparent use of financial and other resources within that official's area of responsibility.
Yes, Chair.
So the broad proposition you are happy with. You have to say yes and not nod. You must remember that. Then the last one, which I think is also important, not as important as the others, but relevant, would be section 66 and 68 of the PFMA, because these say they would apply to any transaction that binds or may bind an institution. And in essence, section 66 prohibits the department from entering into any transaction that binds or may bind the department unless such transaction is authorized by the PFMA. So it has a tangential relevance to the circumstances under which you could bind the department. Can we proceed?
We
Thank
can
you.
proceed, Chair.
We are briefly going to look at what different witnesses said they understood your responsibilities to be. And this will relate to some of the testimony that has been given before this commission. The context really is that a material part of the advice that you would have given, and you will explain as we go along, this is just as giving you context, either in relation to the appointment of implementing agents or the approval of proposals placed before the HOD by Estina, or any recommendations on any deviation from SCM policy, or the approval of any agreement. Those are matters that you were involved in, either directly or indirectly. So the testimonies that I'm going to be reading to you, or the questions I will be asking you, will relate to what others thought your role was.
Okay, Chair.
Can we just start with looking at the SCM policy document, which will be found at reference bundle A. So if you look at the bundles behind you,
Bundle A.
reference bundle A, and if you turn to page 333, it's right at the end. It should be right at the end. So this is the supply chain management policy document, which was signed by Mr. Tavete as the HOD on the 1st of April, 2012.
Chair, wait for me, let me get to it.
Do the best you can to raise your voice so I can hear you, Ms. Dhlamini. Did you say 333, Mr. Bash?
On the top right-hand side, Chairman, yes. Oh, it's because that's the reference I want to take it to. My apologies. My apologies to the Chairman and to you, you, ma'am. The document itself starts at page 325, but I want to take you to page 333. Does that clear it up, Chairman? It starts,
Or the relevant page is 333?
yes, it starts at 325,
Yes.
but the first page I want to take her to is page 333 of that document.
Okay.
Page 333, you are there?
I am there, Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
And I know that you've dealt with this, especially in your first affidavit, ma'am, but I really just want to have an overview. I'm not going to stop you from going, we're going to deal with your affidavits later, from going back to those particular areas you wanted to emphasize. But for current purposes, clause 2.1.4 on that page deals with the role of the accounting officer, that would be the HOD, and it says that the HOD can do various things, including sub-delegating powers and duties to the CFO and SEM practitioners to discharge SEM functions. You don't take issue with that.
I don't have an issue.
If you go over the page to page 334, you get the role of the CFO. Sub 2.2 deals with all of the things that were expected of you. Can you please just read those into the record because they're particularly important to this particular investigation?
Paragraph 2.2, role of the Chief Financial Officer, ensuring that the department's procurement processes are in line with the applicable legislation, ensuring that the department's procurement policy is effectively implemented, ensure that officials implementing, applying, and managing the SEM policy are trained in accordance with the prescribed requirements, guiding and monitoring the supply chain management unit in the operations, served as a member of the bid adjudication committee.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
In addition to that, you then have at 2.5, the delegation by the HOD, which would be consistent with Section 44 of the PFMA. And that, there I'm referring to clause 2.6.1. I just point these out to you so that when we have a discussion about your role, you bear these in mind, what this document said your role was. If we go over the page to 335, we there see at clause 3.3, procurement above the transaction value of 500,000, which speaks to competitive bids being invited for all procurement above 500,000. Now, we've already said that you have to make sure that the prescripts of this document must be complied with. And I know you'll deal with the exceptional cases. I won't stop you. I'm just going through the general position. Can we then go over the page? At clause 3.5.1, there is a provision that says that any reason for deviating from inviting competitive bids should be recorded and approved by the accounting officer. You are comfortable with that? We then move on to page 349, ma'am. 349. And at 349, you've got clause 2.19, which speaks to the appointment of consultants. To the extent that that may be relevant, I just wanted to point it out to you because you may want to speak to us about who may or may not have been a consultant as opposed to an implementing agent when we get to that part. We then move on to page 352, which speaks to irregular expenditure and payments, which is another critical element to the investigation we have been conducting. It's clause 3.4, and it spells out what irregular expenditure might be. And again, of course, anything that does not fit the prescripts as set out in this document could constitute, might constitute irregular expenditure. I then take you to page 356. I won't dwell on it. I simply point out that this part deals with ethical standards. And then we go to the last page, which is 359, which is of particular importance, which under roles and responsibilities, this is what Mr. Tabete put into this document. 359, it reads as follows. Responsibility for the implementation of this policy rests with the Chief Financial Officer with the assistance of the Senior Manager, Supply Chain Management. You are happy that that's what's written here?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, that's going to become an important provision in relation to whether you were the custodian or not the custodian of this policy document.
Must we put that file away for now?
Just to the side for now, Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman, I don't know if you want us to go just a little beyond 15:15, or if you want us to take the short adjournment now and come back, or you want us to...
I'm easy. I'm easy. What's from your side? Do you want us to go up to 12:30 and then take the tea break, or should we take it now?
Chairman, we're going to the transcripts now, so maybe we should just take a short adjournment.
Yeah.
And then come back and go to the, we'll need the transcripts file possibly as we come back.
Yeah, okay. We'll take the tea adjournment. It's now 15:15. We'll resume at 12:30. We adjourn. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, you will need for the next couple of questions the bundle, the transcripts bundle. You will also need Mr. Tabete's first affidavit, which can be found in the old Exhibit HH 10A.
Okay. Or what we can do, because I don't want to have too many files here, as and when you refer to a particular one, you will announce and he will give it to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chairman.
For now, do I just still Estina Bundle 01?
I think let us start with, if you could be handed Mr. Tabete's affidavit, which
Okay.
is in HH 10A.
Yeah.
And it's page, the black numbers, it would be page 9. That
Okay.
paragraphs, I beg your pardon, Chairman, I do beg your pardon. I too have 3 files here. It's page 13, MRT 13. If it's Tabete we're looking at, MRT 13 at paragraph 37.4. MRT 13. Thank you. You have Mr. Tabete's affidavit there, ma'am. HH 10 and in brackets small a.
I have it, Chair.
Thank you. What he says at page 13, paragraph 37.4. And 37.5. Essentially, I think, aligns to what we have discussed on the responsibilities of a CFO. So, and you will confirm if this is correct. He says, for instance, that all payments which were made in respect of the Vrede Dairy project, including payments to Estina, were authorized by the Provincial Treasury after having been duly verified by me and the department's Chief Financial Officer. The Chief Financial Officer had to verify and confirm the correctness of the invoices, had to do a tax clearance on the payee, and had to manage the payments in accordance with the approved budget before any payment would be made. Now, that would fall squarely within the financial management portfolio that you would hold. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
Then the following paragraph says, again, this is Mr. Tabete saying, I did not perform any function and did not take any decision in respect of the implementation and execution of the Vrede Dairy project without having followed the prescribed departmental processes or without having first obtained the required approvals and authority from the MEC Agriculture and the EXCO. Now here again, when he speaks to the prescribed departmental processes, you would be the person advising him on how to comply with those. That's part of what you do. Yes or no?
Chairperson, I think for me, this statement is too broad, especially that when it refers to approvals and authority from the MECs and EXCO. If it has to be confined to my responsibility, then it would be confined within the confinement of the PFMA. And the PFMA solely, the accounting is very clear. HOD is the accounting officer. So once you bring the MEC and EXCO into the PFMA matters, then you're starting to deal with issues of interference. So with paragraph 37.5, I'm not agreeing with it 100%. Yes, the processes of the department with regard to financial management issues, because there's a lot of processes. That's why I'm saying, Chair, this statement is too broad. There's a lot of processes that are happening. For instance, when you deal with projects, it's a process. when you identify the project, is a process, which process the CFO might not be responsible for or might not even participate. Hence, I'm saying this statement is too broad and too vague for me.
So, what he is saying here, he refers to functions that he performed in respect of the implementation and execution of the Friede Dairy project. And he says there is no function and there is no decision he took in respect of the implementation and execution of the Friede Dairy project. One, without having followed the prescribed departmental processes, or two, without having obtained the required approvals and authority from the MEC, Agriculture, and the EXCO. Now, you have made the point that the MEC and EXCO, if I understood you correctly, ought not to be involved in the decisions relating to the implementation of a project such as that. Did I understand you correctly?
Chair, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is with regard to processes of financial management, which are within the confinement of the PFMA.
Yeah.
That is the role of the accounting office.
And are you saying that in regard to that role, there is no approval required from the required by the accounting officer from the MEC or from the Executive Council? Is that what you are saying? He must just do his job, or she must do her job.
Okay. What I mean, Chairperson, is yes, there might be other, I'm aware of other processes whereby all the projects, for instance, before they can be implemented, they would be approved by the EXCO or the MEC, because we will then with regard to the MEC, as we prepare the budget, we will present the projects to the MEC. MEC will say it's okay, and there's another process of the EXCO and the budget lekgotla, where in the budget lekgotla, you will then present the projects of the department. Then EXCO would agree to that. EXCO is part of the budget lekgotla. What I meant here, especially I was referring to processes. When HOD is saying, I did not perform any function and did not take any decision in respect of the implementation and execution of the Friede Dairy without having followed the prescribed departmental processes. And then he said, processes or without having first obtained the required approval and authority from the MEC. Yes, the latter part, I agree with it. And hence I'm saying, in terms of the processes of the department, yes, he was following the processes of the department, and I can only talk to those processes with regard to financial management and issues around that involves into the PFMA.
Oh, so you are saying you would limit your comment
Yes.
to those processes.
Yes.
Anything outside of that, you don't have an issue with him saying he didn't implement any decisions of this project without seeking the required approvals authority of the MEC or EXCO. You don't have a problem with that either. All you are saying is the ones that you are definite about in terms of compliance are the ones relating to the financial management processes.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Chairperson.
Yes, okay. Now, Mr. Bashe's question was whether insofar as Mr. Tabete says in this paragraph that the functions he performed and the decisions he made in regard to the implementation of this project, he followed the prescribed departmental processes, at least in regard to that, she was asking, would he have complied or followed those processes on your advice? I understood her to be asking that. In other words, you were giving advice as to what should be done in regard to the processes on financial management, at least.
Chairperson, can you clarify that question? Maybe I'm missing something.
Okay, I think what you said is with regard to financial management, processes relating to financial management of this project in the department. I understood you to say those, you can testify to those, that those were complied with.
That's what I'm saying, Chairperson.
Yes. Now, here he is saying he complied with those. And as I understood Mr. Bashe's question, it includes asking whether in complying with those, he was acting on your advice or guidance or not.
Chairperson, in dealing with that matter, we will have to unpack them. As I said, processes, there are a lot of processes. Unless we unpack those processes
those
that
processes.
he's referring to, then
Yes.
I can say, with this process, yes, he
You
complied,
were-
he seeked
okay.
my
Okay.
advice.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
So your answer would be, in regard to some processes, it would have been with your guidance or advice, but in regard to others, it might not have been with your advice.
That's exactly what I want to say, Chairperson,
Okay.
or what I'm saying.
Mr. Bashe?
And we are going to unpack them because we're going to talk about the deviation memoranda, those submissions, where your signature appears under recommended. We're going to talk about the agreements, again, where your signature appears, and I know you say you signed as a witness, et cetera, et cetera. So you are correct when you say you are more comfortable in dealing with specific cases. We will be getting to those. I was really just trying to give you that broad overview before we deal specifically with deviations, for instance, and your role in that. So we will get there. And if you are comfortable, Chairman, there are examples that we will place before her.
Yes, no, that's fine. But before you proceed, can I clarify this one point? Ms. Dhlamini, Mr. Tabete here says every function he performed and, as I understand it, and the decision he made in the implementation of the Vlede Dairy project, he, among other things, obtained required approvals and authority from the MEC, Agriculture and Exco. Now, on your understanding, in regard to a project like this, wouldn't the approval that may be required from the MEC and maybe the Executive Council be limited to approving the project as such, but when it comes to the various functions and decisions to be made in implementing it, wouldn't that be left to the accounting officer and his management, and the politicians would no longer be involved in that?
You are correct, Chairperson. That's how it works. MEC,
Yes.
Exco, they approve the projects to say the department can implement this project. They note the budget, the financial implication of the project. But when it comes to specifics in terms of implementing, making the project to work, that's the HOD and his management.
So would it be correct then to say, if this statement by Mr. Tabete is factually correct, then it would mean that the MEC and the Executive Council got involved in various implementation decisions in respect of which they should not be involved, because that should be for the management and the accounting officers and not for the politicians. If this is correct, if this is what it means.
Yes, Chairperson, if this statement is correct, that's what it would mean.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chairman. And we will come back to this issue of the relationship between the executive, as in the MEC, and the administrative staff when we talk about the first payment of 30 million, because in your affidavit you say MEC Zwane asked you to go and see the finance people about that payment. So that's exactly the kind of example that the chairman has in mind when MEC instructs you to go and ask for money. That now is delving into the implementation. Go and get money for this project. We'll come back to it because it's a specific set of questions. I just want to foreshadow it so that you know that I will be linking the chairman's question with that example where the MEC actually told you to go to Treasury and get the first 30 million. Are you happy with that?
Oh, okay, Chairperson.
I just want to come back very briefly again to Mr. Tabete's reliance on you as the CFO. And if you look at the transcripts bundle, the thin little transcripts bundle at page 20, there's a discussion that he was having with the chairman and as I was probing him, where he actually says, and it's page 20, it's only one number there, it's written in red, where he actually says at line, from about line 13, he says he can't be a superhuman being, not when he has an expert on his team. So I'm paraphrasing, such as the CFO. I'm simply showing you where I get it from. And here he was essentially saying that he relies on you when it comes to taking judgment calls that relate to finance. That's the essence of what he says in this part of the transcript. I'm simply consolidating what he has said in the affidavit. He had a debate with the chairman, and here he says that you are in a better position to understand what, for instance, Treasury would want, what the Auditor General would want. And this is correct, it must be correct, that he would rely on you for this financial advice.
Yes, it's correct, Chairperson. He could rely on me. But as we deal with these issues, I will show that there's instances where he did not rely on me. Hence I will emphasize the fact that he could, but not always that he relied on me.
Okay, again, I'm going to come back to this because here we were talking about the monthly and quarterly reports that were submitted. I know you want to deal with them. You've dealt with them in your supplementary affidavit. Please bear this in mind, that his view was, as he interrogated the monthly and quarterly reports submitted by Estina, you were an important source of guidance to him because you are financially astute. We'll come to that when you deal with your supplementary affidavit. I then briefly want to take you to page 23 of the same transcript bundle. And Dr. Masiteng, we also asked him about the competencies that a CFO would have. And there you have from line 10, or from line 6 really, where he summarizes that an accounting officer should appoint a CFO with relevant experience, et cetera, to manage, interpret, analyze information, working capital, assets, etc. I don't know if you want to read it, but it really confirms what we have been dealing with all along, what your competencies ought to have been. Are you comfortable that it confirms that? Or would you like to read it?
I'm comfortable, Chair.
Then I want to very briefly, so I don't have to necessarily come back to this bundle too soon, take you to page 72 of the same bundle. And there we have the testimony of Mr. Dumisani Cele, page 72, from about line 9 to about 14, where he specifically says that you, the CFO, are the custodian of the SCM policy. It's one of the prescripts, one of the policy documents that you would be giving advice on. And again, this links into the advice you're giving to the HOD and of course to other managers as well. You have disputed this in your affidavit that you are the custodian of the SCM policy. So maybe you want to explain what you meant when you said you are not the custodian. And to assist you, you deal with this in your first affidavit under at page, black numbers, page 9, going through to page 11 of that document. And because this is your explanation, I think it's correct for us to place it on record, that this is how you viewed your role. Now that you know what Dr. Masiteng, what Mr. Tabete and Mr. Cele believed your role was. So if you are at your paragraph 7.1, 7.2, are you there, Ms. Dhlamini?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. I just want to give you the opportunity to explain to the chairman. You don't have to read it, but just to explain to the chairman why your view was that you are not the custodian of the SCM policy.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, generally, the policies of the department, the custodian is the HOD, because the HOD is the one who approves the policies. However, those policies might impact on different managers of different responsibilities. And with that regard, that's where they are being implemented. Hence, even in the policy, the supply chain management policy, as Advocate Leah has indicated, I think it's almost the last page of the policy. It says the implementation is the responsibility of the CFO and assisted by supply chain management. That's where I was coming to in this. When I say I'm not the custodian, but I am the implementer of this policy. And furthermore, I said, even other managers implement this policy because Section 45 of the PFMA gives responsibility or assigns responsibility to other officials. And that other officials will be inclusive of me also, which then I would explain to Chairperson why I'm saying that. Because in terms of other officials, where do I fit? I fit whereby I have two roles in the department. I run a unit, which is my primary responsibility, to ensure that the activities of that unit are happening, which is financial management in general. I have staff, I have my budget. Section 45 of the PFMA applies to me in that regard. And then I have this other role, this other cap that I'm wearing, which is in terms of the Treasury regulations, which says I must assist the accounting officer in terms of his responsibility, right? So when you read Section 45 of the PFMA, it talks about other managers also implementing efficient, effective, and transparent financial management. And that is inclusive of supply chain when you implement it. Hence, I'm saying, yes, the implementation, the monitoring of this policy would fall under us. The guidance would be under the CFO. But it does not necessarily mean I assume exclusive responsibility. Because those who has budget, in terms of in terms of Section 45 of the PFMA, as and when they implement that, they ought to know this policy. They ought to be able to implement this policy, and I think it's even in the policy where it says we I think it's part of my responsibility. I ought to assist and train those who implement this policy, and that has happened. That's what I meant, Chairperson, when I said I don't assume exclusive responsibility of this policy, and I am not the custodian.
Well, when I saw that distinction you sought to make, I wasn't sure what the point was that you sought to make, because you made the point clear that part of your responsibilities as CFO was to see to it that the SAM policy is implemented properly, as I understood. Is that right?
That is right, Chairperson.
Yes. So, in the context of what we are dealing with, one of the issues is whether that policy was properly implemented. You have to establish what the policy is, you have to look at what happened, and then say, did what happened comply with the policy when it was implemented? So it seemed to me that if you are responsible for the proper implementation of the policy, that's the important part. So I wasn't sure what the point is about being or not being a custodian. But from what you are saying, it seems that all you are saying is the person who must approve policies for the department is the accounting officer, and that's the person you call the custodian. Is that right?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes. But as far as implementation, you readily accept that it was your responsibility to ensure that there was proper implementation of the SM policy.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes, and you make the point that there was a responsibility on other people to ensure that there was compliance as well. But in the end, I think at the top or below this, the accounting officer, it was you.
That's correct, Chairperson.
Okay, all right.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And in your affidavit at paragraph 7.6, you essentially say in different language exactly what the Chairman is saying, because you say here that any document with financial implications, those submissions have to come to the CFO for recommendation. So again, when they come to the CFO for recommendation, your task is to make sure that the policies of the organization, certainly the supply chain management policies, and then the legal prescripts have been complied with. That's what part of making a recommendation would entail.
That is correct, Chairperson, especially when it deals with issues of financial management.
Yes.
That is correct.
Absolutely. Chairman, I believe that we now have a base from which we can move on to the next area. And the next area we're moving to, Ms. Dhlamini, really deals with what we, the legal team, call a top-down initiation of this Vrede Dairy project. We are aware that the project itself, the Mohuma Mobum, to till the soil, Mohuma Mobum, initiation started in 2010. That's correct, isn't it?
It started in 2011.
No, Ms. Dhlamini. It started in 2010 because the idea was conceived by the MEC Zwane, in 2010 on our records.
Let me, Chairperson, let me explain it.
My apologies, ma'am, in 2011.
Yes.
2011, is that what you said? 2011.
Yeah, she said
I'm with
2011.
you. Yes, no, I'm with you. Because when we had Ms. Rockman here, she spoke about a presentation of September 2011 that spoke to the Mohuma Mobum concept. So I immediately agree with you, 2011. Can we tick that one, 2011?
Yes, Chairperson, it started in 2011.
And the important element to this is it was conceived by the MEC. At the time, it was MEC Zwane. Is this correct?
That is correct, Chairperson.
And one of the projects within Mohuma Mobung was the Vrede Dairy project,
That is correct.
along with a range of others, piggeries, hatcheries, a range of other projects.
That is correct, Chairperson.
There was no budget, from your perspective as a finance person, no budget for the Vrede Dairy project as a project in the 2011-2012 financial year. You properly budgeted for it from 2012 onwards. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, Chairperson, in 2011-2012, we did not have any budget for Vrede Dairy.
Yes. Now, Vrede Dairy went I beg your pardon, the budgetary period would have been from April 2011 to March 2012.
Can you repeat that, Chair?
The period, the financial year,
Yes.
April to March, every year, April to March.
Yes, Chairperson, our financial year runs from April to March.
So come March 2012, you had no specific budget for the dairy project.
End of the 2011-2012 financial year, in other words. By the end of the 2011-2012 financial year, you were using the budget that you had prepared much earlier, which did not include the Vrede Dairy project.
Yes, for the year 2011-2012, that ends March.
Yeah,
We did not have a budget for Vrede Dairy.
yeah.
Thank you. That's what I'm establishing. But in the meantime, in that period, MEC Zwane went out to Vrede to speak to the people of Vrede, Tembelihle Township about this project. You know about that,
In the year 2011-2012,
correct, ma'am?
Chair, I was not aware, I'm not aware that he was talking to people about it in that particular year.
Okay.
I say this because Mr. Tabete's evidence was that certainly by June 2012, when the first agreement was signed, he had already accompanied MEC Zwane to Vrede to speak to beneficiaries, to invite beneficiaries to the project. So I know that definitely by June, on Mr. Tabete's evidence, some work had been done in just at least talking to people about this project. You were not part of any of those discussions.
Chairperson, I was not part of those discussions.
What we also know, and dispute it if you have facts on which you can dispute this, is that when Mr. Tabete arrived in August of 2011, he is the one who did a desktop study on an integrated dairy project. Would you know about this?
I would not have known, Chairperson, for simple reason that he would not report to me on the work that he does. He rather report to the MEC on the work that he does.
No problem. Don't forget, the context here is this was a top-down initiation of a project, not a bottom-up initiation of a project. This is why I'm giving you these facts, and these are facts that are on record. Mr. Tabete also gave evidence that in March, he went to India to go and speak with Paras because he thought they would make a good strategic partner. So already in February, March, he was traveling to India to go and speak to Paras. Did you know about that trip?
I was aware of the trip of the HOD to India.
Are you also aware that he did not take a single official from district services with him on that trip?
I'm aware, Chairperson, that he went alone.
He did not go alone, he went with Mr. Narayan.
Okay, Chairperson, I wanted to say from the department. When I say alone, I
Yes.
meant to say from the
Yeah,
department.
he was the only one
He was the only
from
one
the department.
from the department.
Yes, okay.
And the motivation he gave to the Premier in a submission memorandum that was given to the Premier, I think it's dated the 28th of February 2012, was that there were 3 dairy projects that he was looking into: Qwaqwa, Sesotho, and Vrede. And there was a 17 million rand budget that was available to deal with feasibility studies, etc., to kickstart these dairy projects. I'm simply summarizing what he said to the Premier, which enabled the Premier to sign off on him going to India to go and explore the dairy farm option with Paras. I don't know if you're aware of that particular memorandum and the quantum or the amount of 17 million that he mentioned or that the MEC mentioned in that particular memorandum.
Chairperson, I am not aware of the memorandum that went to the Premier. And also, as the CFO, I was not aware of the 17 million. Maybe it would help me if I can be given the details to say, was he saying the 17 million was in the 2011-2012 financial year, or the 17 million was in the 2012-2013 financial year? That would help me. Then I would know if we had that budget or not. If I get the specifics of which financial year is he referring to.
We will come back to that because you're going to take us through the various allocations from your supplementary affidavit. You've annexed various financial documents. For current purposes, the proposition is simply this, that what was told to the Premier was there's money that we want to spend on dairy farming, dairy projects. At that time, they had 3 in mind, and this was part of the motivation for him to go to India to go and explore the possibility of this dairy project. That's really the essence of what I'm putting to you. Are you happy with that?
I hear you, Chairperson. I'm not aware of the 17 million.
That's fine. The other important element is that in his affidavit to this commission, Mr. Zwane confirms that he suggested that Mr. Narayan accompany Mr. Tabete because of the local cultural issues that might arise in India. Again, the only issue I bring to your attention is nobody from district services was involved in going to look for a strategic partner for the Vrede Dairy project.
Yes, Chair, I'm aware of that.
Would you have expected that Mr. Tabete would have taken with him some or other officials from the department when he went on such a trip? Would it have been your expectation that he would bring one or more officials with him?
To be honest, Chairperson, I didn't know at what point a decision is taken to say there's a trip that goes overseas and these are the officials that have been taken. I was not aware of the criteria because sometimes the limit of the number of people who would undertake an outside of we call it outside of the country trip will also be determined if we have a budget to carry all those people. So I would not have known the criteria that is used.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Then my question, I suppose, is seeing the MEC Zwane, was so involved in initiating and promoting this project. My question to you is it usual for a MEC to get this engaged in promoting a particular project? Because it's associated with him. His home was Vrede. He went to look for beneficiaries, etc., etc.
Chairperson, MEC would promote all the projects that are approved, that are part of our budget. As to the scale at which he would do that, I guess it's up to him. But all the projects, he would own them up, all of them.
Maybe I should pose the question differently. It's in the initiation. Is it usual for an MEC to initiate and then champion a project in the same manner in which the Vrede Dairy project was initiated by MEC Zwane and championed by him?
No, not as far as I know.
And maybe a follow-up question would be, during the time that Mr. Zwane was MEC of Agriculture and you were the CFO of that department, is there any other project that he initiated in the same way as he initiated this one? In other words, as Mr. Basha says, a top-down approach where the initiation comes from the MEC and he then champions it, as opposed to a project that comes from the officials' management and his approval is sought if that's necessary.
Maybe, Chairperson, to give context to this from where I am sitting, I would say initiating Vrede Dairy as a project, I cannot confirm to say it was initiated by MEC Zwane, the project Vrede Dairy, under Mohoma Mobu. But Mohoma Mobu, as a strategy and a framework within the department, was initiated by MEC Zwane.
Okay.
As to the specifics of the projects that fall within that Mohoma Mobu, because there were a couple of them who initiated them, I cannot really say.
Yes.
But when Advocate Leah was talking about top-down, and to an extent, and then I agreed, is when he was saying Mr. Tabete is the one who started to do a desktop.
Yeah.
And Advocate is saying, if I heard her correctly, is saying Mr. Tabete said that in his affidavit. So then I would take it that yes, he started that project.
Okay, maybe...
The Vrede Dairy itself.
Yes, okay, maybe I misunderstood Ms. Kabash. I thought she was talking about what was initiated by the MEC Zwane, but maybe I said Vrede Dairy project, whereas she may have been talking about the broader strategy. Yes, Ms.
No,
Kabash.
Chairman, you didn't understand me. The Mohoma Mobu concept was indeed conceived by MEC Zwane. I think we've made common cause on that. And then we moved on from that to say the Vrede Dairy project, judging by the conduct, I'm now explaining my question, judging by the conduct of the MEC, it was championed. The specific project was championed by him. He went out to Vrede. We have that testimony on record, to go and look for beneficiaries, to talk to beneficiaries, etc., etc. If we even take the instruction he gave you, he involved himself personally in making sure that this project moved forward, if I can use that very broad term.
In that context, I understand.
And you accept?
I accept.
Okay, all right.
In fact, because this is such a central issue, I think we can agree that what would normally happen, and I'm not saying always happen, but normally happen is district services, which is in charge of farmer support, would bring a project and it would be cascaded up until it eventually gets to the HOD. That's what would normally happen. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Chairperson.
In this instance, Dr. Masiteng, who was the chief director at the time at District Services, says in his transcript, I won't go to it, we don't need to go to the transcript each time, Chairman, but the reference is there if we need to check on the validity of the proposition. He says that he didn't know about Mr. Tabete going to India. He had nothing to do with the appointment of Estina as an implementing agent for the Vrede Dairy project. And the first time he really got involved with this project was when he had returned from China and was asked to prepare what we have come to call the second deviation submission. Would you agree with that?
Number one, I would not know why Dr. Masiteng would say he did not know that HOD went to India. But what I expect him to know is HOD was not around in the department, because I just cannot remember when it came, because once he's not there, somebody is appointed to act as an HOD. So, and I can't remember who was appointed to act as an HOD at that particular point in time. So we would know that HOD is not there. Maybe, yes, he's right, he did not know the specifics of the trip that HOD undertook. Secondly, on the issue of whether Dr. Masite knew about this project or not, I also don't understand why he said so. Because records will show, as at the time when we conclude the budget for 2012-2013 financial year, Vrede Dairy was there in the list of the projects. And our transfer payments policy would show that it says the district services during the planning, when the budget is planned, district services will provide the CFO with the list of projects. So part of part of that list that was provided and ultimately approved and became part of our budget for 2012-2013. Vrede Dairy was there with only a budget of 9 million. So I would not know from which angle did Dr. Masiteng said he was not aware of the project. What I'm aware that he was not there when Estina came to make a presentation, which changed the whole shape of the project. When it had only 9 million budget, then it grew up to 570 budget, of which 342 was required from the department. In that presentation, yes, he is right, he was not there. But honestly, to say he did not know about Vrede Dairy project at all, I don't know why he said so.
So, clearly your expectation is that he would have known.
Because the list that comes into the budget is provided to the CFO when the CFO prepares the budget by district services.
Yes.
And besides that, those projects, because they were funded by the conditional grants, which is Ilemaletsema and CASP. And Vrede Dairy was funded by Ilemaletsema and CASP. And Dr. Masiteng was the grant manager. He's the one who would go to national and present that. He's the one who would go to what we call national assessment of panel, who would look at those projects that we want to fund with the grants and approve them. So I would have expected him to have said, I knew Vrede Dairy at the time when it had only 9 million, because it was part of our projects.
Okay.
Can I make sure that the chairman understands this fact, ma'am? And this is what Dr. Masiteng says. Just to go to the CASP example. He went to ask for money for the Vrede Dairy project in January of 2013. So he doesn't deny his involvement as of the time of the deviation memo going forward, because the deviation memo is a 2012 document. What he says he was not part of was the development, anything to do with the development of this project up to the time that he signed that memo on the 26th, I think, of May 2012. So I just don't want us to confuse issues. He did go to CASP to ask for money for the Vrede Dairy project, January 2013. That's clear evidence that's on record, both from him and from Ms. Mchiza. We are talking about these early stages where this project was being developed and where district services was not involved in trying to deal with how this project should develop, should evolve, who should be involved, which implementing agent should be appointed, etc., etc. That's what we're dealing with. Those were decisions that were taken at a different level.
Oh, okay, Chairperson. What I was saying, Chairperson, Advocate Leah is talking about Dr. Masiteng went national in January 2013. That's when we are dealing with the planning preparation of the budget for the 2013-2014 financial year, which will start the 1st of April. But what I explained is, in that year of 12-13, which is the
Of
year...
2012-2013 financial year.
2013, Chairperson, which is the year, the financial year, that in January of that financial year, he went and presented this. But however, I'm saying, already at the beginning of 2012-2013 financial year, Vrede Dairy was part of the project. Maybe he did not know, but I'm saying the list that has to be provided to the CFO when the CFO prepare the budget comes from national. Maybe he could explain how the Vrede Dairy for that particular year, with a budget of 9 million, found itself in the budget, in the list of the projects. Because the 2013 presentation that he went and asked for is after Vrede Dairy has already been upscaled to be a mega project. That's when he presented to get, and he got 53 million.
So,
and that 53 million would be implemented or paid and used in the financial year 2013-2014.
So, are you saying from early in 2012, or rather, for the best part of 2012 calendar year, which falls within the 2012-2013 financial year, for that period, there is a lot of activity that happened with regard to the Vrede Dairy project. And you are saying that part of what happened were preparations that would inform the budgeting for the 2013-2014 financial year. And you are saying that some of the information that would come to you ultimately as the CFO for budgeting purposes would have been prepared by his unit or his section, and that would have included references to this project. And you are surprised how that information could have found its way to you without him knowing about this project. Is that what you're saying?
And that's exactly what I'm saying, Chairperson.
Yes.
Hence, I was trying to explain, Chairperson, to say probably what Dr. Masiteng was not part of, which I agree, he was not there.
That was the presentation.
Is when the presentation was done. And that presentation is the one that necessitated this project to ultimately be upscaled as a mega project. But as a small project, maybe let me use that word, even if it's not the correct word. As a small project with only 9 million budget, it was in the budget, it was appropriated, and it went through district services, it was under the budget of district services. So hence I'm saying, I don't know why he would say he was not aware of
the project.
of it. But I would accept if he said, I'm not saying I'm not accepting what he said, but I would rather say, I can say yes if he was saying, when it became a mega project, I was not there. There I'm saying yes, he was not there.
Okay, Mr. Rush.
I will simply give you a quick example of the first deviation memo that somebody else signed because he was acting. Masiteng was not part of that. He did not know about that. So that's a quick example of an instance where a document came from his unit that he knew nothing about. I really just to give you that context. That's the first example. The second being, this is why I wanted us to be clear. Your financial year starts in April. We will be dealing in a few minutes with that first document that came from Estina, which was an April 2012 document. So the documentation that was being prepared around the Vrede Dairy project was documentation that was sitting at a high level. It was not sitting at a district services level.
Chairperson, yes, in that regard, yes, I agree, because even the presentation was started from the HOD. So the notion that says it was driven from the top, I think is correct.
Okay.
Last issue on this aspect. District services is central to the registration of beneficiaries. Is that not correct?
Yes, Chairperson.
I just wanted us to tick that box, that district services would be central to the registration of beneficiaries. Let's talk about implementing agents, because that's been an important topic. So I'm moving away from the top-down, bottom-up issue to a different issue. This commission has had various witnesses speak to implementing agents. I really want you to be brief because we have quite a bit of evidence on this, but I think it's fair for you to give us your understanding of two things. One, when did you start using implementing agents? First question, I'll break down my question. So when did you start using implementing agents?
We started using implementing agents in the financial year 2011, 2012. That's when we started using implementing agent. Because in 2011, 2012 financial year, I said I was transferred to agriculture 2010, which is the financial year 2010, 2011. And then we got audited. And one of the issues, which was a burning issue, was issues of asset management, especially those assets that would be sitting in the farmers. So the problem here, Chairperson, was before then, the grants were classified as goods and services or capital expenditure. Once you classified them as such and you procure, say you procure a tractor for a farmer, because you procure it under capital expenditure of the department, that tractor must get into the asset register of the department. Now you come the time of the audit. This tractor is sitting in the asset register of the department, but this tractor is not in the department. This tractor is somewhere in Thabo Mofutanyane, in Kwakwa, and it has a barcode, and it has been working for years or for months. When AG wants to verify the completeness of your asset register, completeness means he can find all the assets that you have listed You want to check that all the assets you have listed in your asset register, they are all there. Now he must check that. Then he said, oh, there's this tractor, I want to see it, I want to verify it. And then you take the Auditor General to Kwakwa and say, here's the farm. Sometimes you get to that farm, they say, no, it's been leased to another farm, you go to that farm. Ultimately, you find it. The problem now is, after you have found it, now, that barcode is no longer there, because it's a small thing. Now, you can't see it anymore. Now, AG is saying, but you can't convince me that this is the tractor. Yes, I can see the tractor. The only thing that will convince him is when he sees the barcode, that the barcode in the asset register correlate with the barcode on the tractor. But that barcode is no longer there. So that's where the problem started. Then in that particular year, then the accounting officer then was Dr. Morosi, took a decision to say, we would rather use implementing agent. And that's in the financial year also, where we went to Treasury and explained this that I'm explaining to the chairperson around the complexities in managing the assets. That would be in the asset register of the department, but they're sitting somewhere in the farmers. And that's where we started to change the classification of goods and of the grants from being goods and services to being transfer payments, which is transfer payments to farmers. Because if you, the conditions of the grants are saying they are for the farmers, it's for summer support, so they are not intended for the use of the department. They are not intended, even those assets are not intended to be the assets of the department. They are intended, rightly so, to go to the farmer because the money you use is supposed to support the farmer. You buy cattle, you buy fodder, you buy feed, you buy all those things. So that's in 2011, Chair, 2011-2012 financial year, where we started to use the implementing agents.
Is it correct, however, that an implementing agent has no role in the absence of the beneficiary? Mr. Tabete liked to call them the farmers. So it's the same term, farmer beneficiary. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, the implementing agent has no role in the beneficiaries. The role is only to assist us implement those projects. Like, let's say we want to put up a chicken house. We will help us to build that. So basically, they don't really have a role in unless I don't understand whether it's in identifying or what does that mean?
No, what I wanted to understand from you is the only reason you bring in an implementing agent is so that they can do something that's going to benefit the farmer. Is that clearer?
Can you repeat that, Chair?
The reason you bring an implementing agent to do work that the department should be doing is so that the beneficiary, the farmer, can benefit from whatever this implementing agent is doing. Am I right?
Whether we use the implementing agent, maybe let me answer it that way. Whether we use the implementing agent or not implementing agent, Chairperson, the farmer would still benefit because whatever product that you come up with, whether you're buying cattle with that grant and it's for a particular farm, they will ultimately go to that particular farm.
I think maybe Ms. Gabasha is looking for what I'm looking for too, and maybe you have explained it, but maybe I just didn't hear it or understand it properly. What was the justification for the department to say, let's bring in implementation or implementing agent? What was the justification? What was the motivation? I know you told me about the issue of the code and the tractor in Kwakwa or whatever, But if was the justification, please repeat it. If that was just one example, but the justification was broader, just tell me.
Oh, thank you, Chairperson. I think now I understand that what is needed here is the justification. The justification, one of the reasons was, the other problem that we are faced with is the issue around, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, was the issue about irregular expenditure. Because I remember very well at that particular year when I arrived, district services would be the one who source who source the quotations when they buy these things. Sometimes will come the time that the AG is going to audit some of these goods and services would have not been delivered. Would say this. I remember there was one particular project where it was said they bought some machines for those beneficiaries to do some salt. It was a salt project. They were going to manufacture a salt. But at the end of the day, they did not receive those. So those are some of the reasons why a decision was taken to say we're going forward, use the implementing agents, and they would then be held accountable with all the expenditure. But the farmer still benefits.
So what gave rise to the idea of using an implementation agent was that there were challenges with regard to managing fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Is that right? On the part of the department, before they came up with this idea of
And also
implementation
irregular expenditure, that's correct.
That was correct.
Yes.
Now, precisely what was the problem? Why was it difficult to manage and control and prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure before you had implementation agents? Why was it a problem, a difficulty?
The problem, Chairperson, was these projects are implemented at different. We have 5 districts in the province. They were implemented all over in all those districts, and you find that one district have a lot of projects, and the officials sitting in those districts would be the one who would implement, would be the one who would source quotations as and when they procure. So it was really a very cumbersome process, because now you start to lose track of these expenditures of the processes, if the processes was really properly followed. And at the time when AG comes, then he picks up all these things to say, but in this case, these people they didn't receive 3 quotations, or there might be, there was a whole lot of issues, Chairperson.
Is the position that officials of the department in different parts of the province were not able to ensure that either there was no fruitless and wasteful expenditure, or that if there was fruitless and wasteful expenditure, it remained within acceptable levels? Is that what the problem was?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes.
And the other problem was, in these instances, the very same officials, they procure, they even receive the goods and services before they go to the farmer. It's them who signs the receipts to say these goods and services, being cattle, being whatever, have been delivered. So basically what happens is they start a process and finish the process. So there was an issue around what we call segregation of duties.
But would those officials have received proper training for managing fruitless and wasteful expenditure? Or was the problem that they were not properly trained to deal with or to manage fruitless and wasteful expenditure?
Chairperson, I cannot say why it was not properly managed. And I also cannot say they were not properly trained, because let's take, for instance, the issue of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. It's a simple thing. When I buy 10 pence and the service provider brings 10 pence and I sign off to say, or brings an invoice that says I have delivered 10 pence, I should have ensured that 10 pence were delivered. Not that at the time when AG comes, AG says, yeah, but you paid for 10 pence, you signed for the invoice, but the 10 pence are not there. It's a simple thing. We would expect anybody to know about it and to be able to manage it.
You see, I'm concerned about the justification or motivation for implementing or implementation agents, simply because, as I understand it, the implementation agents would charge for their services, would they not?
That's correct, Chairperson.
And therefore, if you use your own officials, then you don't pay for extra services. You use the money that otherwise you are now going to use to pay implementation agents. You use it for other projects. So, but you accept one. You say you don't know why the officials were failing to manage fruitless and wasteful expenditure properly, and you can't say they were not trained to deal with that. And you say, actually, it's a simple thing. It's just making sure that if you buy X number of items, make sure that you receive X number and you keep proper records of that, and you make sure the items are there. Is that right?
That's correct, Chairperson.
Yes. So, but the benefit that the department saw in using implementation agents to overcome fruitless and wasteful expenditure that the officials could not manage, what was the benefit? How was it going to be controlled better if you do it this way?
I think the benefit, Chairperson, yes, we then did not have fruitless expenditure. We did not have irregular expenditure. We also have the quality also of the products that we're getting, especially with regard to the infrastructure, was better than what we were getting when we were using our own officials. Because even with our own officials, the issue was probably because you still use contractors, you still appoint somebody to come and do the work.
The code still gets removed.
Yes, I think the issue also goes to monitoring. That with our own officials also, monitoring was not really good. But with the coming in of the implementing agent, monitoring became better. Though it still has, it didn't do away 100% with the challenges, but we could get better products.
So what do you say to somebody who says, therefore, this idea of implementation agents was brought up because the management of the department failed to do their job, namely ensure that the officials in the various parts of the province did their job themselves in terms of making sure that fruitless and wasteful expenditure was managed properly? What do you say to that criticism?
I would agree with that criticism, Chairperson, because that's the criticism you'll also find in our audit report.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of issues arising from the questions the Chairman has been asking you. And the one is, the conclusion that one easily comes to on the explanation that you're giving is that using implementing agents allowed the department to abdicate its responsibility to keep an eye on, one, how government monies were being spent, two, what assets government actually had at the end of the day, three, whether it was getting value for money from the projects that the implementing agents were taking care of. What's your comment?
My comment, Chair, would say, no, the department did not abdicate its responsibility. Hence, I said, challenges are there and they are still there. But monitoring was happening now, not at the scale at which it was supposed to. So, to say the department, we abdicate, if it's the correct wording, with its responsibility, I would say not really, not really.
Can we move on to one or two issues?
Before you do that, Mr. Basha, I want to follow up on your question. But once there was an implementation agent or implementing agent, I keep on forgetting what you call them.
They call them implementing agents.
Implementing agent,
Yes,
yeah.
Chairman.
Once you had an implementing agent, you as the officials, the management of the department, you were monitoring the implementing agent and not the officials of the department in the various parts of the country. You were expecting the implementing agent to be the one that would do your job as management of monitoring those officials. Is that not so?
No, the implementing agent, Chair, would implement the projects, and officials in the department will monitor the work of the implementing agent. They would get reports, they would go and check the projects, that the projects are in accordance with the specifications that were given to the implementing agent. So monitoring, as I said, monitoring was still there. Probably what might have improved is the service providers that the implementing agent would then use in implementing those projects. They would have deliver better product. Because now, okay, let me explain it this way. When you use the implementing agent, say you want to put up a boiler house, the implementing agent will appoint the contractor who will build and it's the responsibility of that implementing agent to make sure that the boiler house is built in terms of the specification, the quality and everything. And the work of the department is to get the reports, monitor the implementing agent, get the report from the implementing agents. And if they are not happy, interact with the implementing agent with those reports.
You know, that's part of what I don't understand. You see, with my legal background, if you put me in an IT sector where I have no knowledge of anything, but maybe I am the chairperson of the board or whatever, I might say we need, or I need, somebody with the IT expertise and experience who will monitor these people who are, or this company that's providing IT services to my company. Because without the expertise, I won't know when they do something wrong. I won't know when their work is below the acceptable standard. So I need somebody who knows what is to be expected from an IT company that is doing A, B, C, D, okay? And they must advise me. Now with you, you are the Department of Agriculture. The people who are in the management of the department, a lot of them are supposed to be people who are knowledgeable on agriculture. okay? Now, you are supposed to implement and monitor the projects that you do. They fall within your sector, okay? Now, I'm talking about management, not about you in particular, okay? Because you might not have the agricultural expertise, you have the financial expertise, but the HOD has got the agricultural expertise and so on. Now, this is a job that you can do as management, or this is the job you are supposed to be able to do and to monitor and implement. But you go and look for somebody else to come and do essentially your job as management of the department. Why? And you are going to pay more money, but you are being paid to do exactly that job as management. Why are you doing that?
Chair, I hear what you are saying, and I accept what you are saying.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. We might just go on just a little longer, if you don't mind, just into a little bit of the lunch hour, if that's in order.
Okay, what's
Can I
your
have another
suggestion?
10 minutes?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Because I just want to finish this implementing agents
Yes.
section,
Okay.
if you don't
All
mind.
right,
Thank you.
okay.
Ma'am, you see, the difficulty, as the chairman points out, but just in terms of what I've heard of the other testimonies of witnesses, is this. You abdicate your authority because what the implementing agent then does is appoint the subcontractors that they prefer to appoint. Doesn't mean that those subcontractors are going to be compliant with our BEE legislation, our preferential policy framework documentation, etc. You, as the department, say, we are not the implementing agent, it's the implementing agent who has subcontracted. And that's why I say you abdicate the responsibility conferred on you in legislation to make sure that certain transformative steps take place, even within the agricultural industry.
Chairperson, I hear that and I accept it.
I will give you a very quick example on the Estina project, because we won't go into too much detail, we've done that already. Very many of the people that were brought to work in this country came from India, whether it was from Mr. Prasad or Mr. Yadav or the consultants who prepared that. There's a 5 million rand feasibility study we've heard about that was prepared by people who are not South African. So a lot of the money, we may find time later on to go through this, a lot of the money that you were paying to Estina actually went to consultants who were coming from everywhere else but South Africa. You accept that? I'm talking about Estina and the Vrede Dairy Project.
Chairperson, because I did not see, because implementation and monitoring of that project was not my responsibility. And I did not see those, but I take it that advocate has facts and I accepted it.
In fact, those facts are in the accounts that you would have looked at, the quarterly and monthly accounts and some of the invoices that would have been presented to you, I presume, so that you could authorize certain payments. But you are correct. This is fact that we have on record. Can I ask you this related question? What is the difference between an implementing agent and a managing agent? And I ask because Estina was appointed as an implementing agent and a managing agent.
Chairperson, I clearly cannot answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you will agree there is a distinction between the two.
I think there
She might
should
not
be, but
know.
I don't really have the definitions of the two, unless the definitions of the two just to be put before me.
Again, it comes back to what you were paying people to do. And when I say you, I mean the department. What the department was paying people to do. So Estina is one example where they were appointed both as an implementing agent and a managing agent. The FDC Free State Development Corporation is another example. When they were appointed, they were charging a 10% management fee for the work they were doing. At the same time, they were getting capital amounts to implement the Vrede Dairy project. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
So for instance, for the FTC, the management fee would be 10%. I'm not sure whether you can quantify, even if you look at the documents Estina submitted, how much was paid to them for managing the project. It may be something you want to look at when we look at the quarterly reports that you appended to your supplementary affidavit.
Okay.
The reason this becomes such an important issue, and it's something the chairman has traversed with other witnesses, is because of the manner in which you then paid implementing agents. You paid them by way of transfer payments, rather than paying them in terms of any of the other lines of expenditure. I'm correct, you paid by way of transfer payments.
That's correct, Chairperson.
And a transfer payment is a payment, you take the payment, you pay it directly to the implementing agent, because most of those transfer payments came from conditional grants.
That's correct, Chairperson.
And the difficulty we've had at this commission is in how you monitored where that money was going to, what that money was doing for you. That's where the nub of the problem is, because you transfer, you haven't gone through a competitive bid. What are they? Is the money being used for its intended purpose, as the PFMA puts it? There our difficulty lies.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, when the implementing agent is appointed, contract signed, part of that contract, they are given projects to say, you are given these 10 projects to implement, right? Now, the department monitoring and implementation unit, they have to ensure that the money that was transferred was spent on those 10 projects that were given to this particular implementing agent.
You see, Ms. Dhlamini, the difficulty with your explanation is it's very general. You know that with Estina, they were paid before they rendered any services. Fact.
Fact, Chairperson.
And I'm not just talking about the first 30 million that was supposed to deal with those first preliminary studies. I'm talking about even the second amount, which came to a total sum of 84 million. Even that money, they were paid, and you don't have a proper accounting of where that money was spent.
Okay, Chairperson, let me explain this. Because it's a transfer payment, let's start with the first. Let's use this Estina of Vrede Dairy. You pay the first 30 million. That 30 million, the first 30 million, there were deliverables attached to it to say, Estina, when you get this money, these are the following things that you must do, which was phase 1 of the project, which it was attached as an extra to the contract. And the nature of transfer payment, you transfer the money, it gets used, and then it gets to be accounted after that. That's how transfer payment works.
In fact, because you deal with those monthly and quarterly accounts in your supplementary affidavit, I want us to unpack what you are saying when we get there. We'll do that immediately after lunch. And I'll tell you what the context will be, just for you to reflect on. Mr. Tabete, of course, as the HOD was here, he was asked all the questions around this. He took us to the agreement and to Annexure A of the agreement, which set out the milestones that had to be achieved. He signed off on those milestones having been achieved in circumstances where we established at this commission that most of them had not been achieved. So you are giving people money for what they say they have done, when in fact, had anybody gone to check, and I would again say, I would like to think the CFO doesn't sign off on anything until she has checked that these services have been rendered. So the difficulty is with nobody monitoring exactly where this money was going and what its intended purpose was, public funds were being spent in a manner that you had not anticipated.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I hear what advocate is saying. Firstly, advocate is telling me that the HOD himself signed and say this milestone has been achieved. As the CFO, I think I've already explained at the beginning to say I'm actually having two caps. I run a unit that runs financial management. I have my budget that I manage. And I have this other advisory role to the accounting officer. So each and every manager or program manager has the budget. The person who's supposed to sign on that budget is the owner of the budget. In this case, I would not have known why those milestones were signed off by the HOD, because I would have expected those milestones to have been signed off by the district services, in particular, the district director. So I would not know why HOD signed for that. And any other service or any other invoice or any other report that would come or any other expenditure that would happen under Friede Dairy would have been signed off by the district services, because that's the program that manages that expenditure. As the CFO, I manage my own budget, my own little budget, which mainly I use it for stationery, traveling of my officials. So that's how it works. And even the transfer policy is very specific in those areas to say who's supposed to do what. Otherwise, if the CFO starts to do that, then you're starting to manage other people's budgets, and they may not be held accountable in terms of Section 45 of the PFMA.
But in principle, if when a certain document is brought to you and it's got the HOD's signature, but you know that it's supposed to also have other signatures, isn't the position that you would say, but why is so-and-so's signature not here? Would that be what you would ask? To say, this document is supposed to have been signed by 3 people, now it's got 1 signature. So in principle, you would want to inquire, would you not?
Chairperson, I did not inquire, because overall, accounting officer, the budget belongs to the accounting office in overall. So even if I have my own little budget, if he feels that, Madam CFO, I want to take, say 1 million from your budget and I'm going to use it, he can do that because it's his budget. He has just given me that, but at the end of the day, that budget belongs to him as an accounting officer.
Okay.
Chairman, I think when we come back, we will then look at those. First, we are going to look at the agreement and the milestones and what Mr. Tabetis signed off on. That's one area we're going to look at. The second area we're going to look at is the monthly and quarterly reports, which you have which we had in any event in our bundles, and the payments that were made to Estina in terms of those reports. That comes to that monitoring function and your approval of the payments. That's the second issue. The third issue we're going to deal with will be the 30 million, the first 30 million that you asked the Provincial Treasury to pay on the 15th of June, and the basis on which you asked for them. Those are 3 important areas that I think we will cover after lunch that are important to the role that you discharged as CFO. Chairman, maybe we should then take the lunch adjournment and...
Yes, no, that's fine. Just before we do that, Ms. Dhlamini, I'm going back to a question that you and I discussed earlier on. It seems to me that the justification or motivation for using implementation agents, certainly in regard to this project, was not that the department did not have the expertise or people who could implement the project. It seems that it was simply that the department or people within the department who were supposed to implement the project or projects such as this, because of problems that may have arisen before, no longer had confidence that they could do that properly, and therefore thought they should bring in implementing agents to do what actually was a job for which they were being paid. Is that a fair proposition?
Chairperson, that proposition is fair with regard to other projects, probably Friedederi also, but with regard to Friedederi, there were other elements, Chairperson. You might be aware from documents that one of the things it was said is Friedederi is also going to invest in that project. They are going to be an investor in that project, whereby the department is going to put up a dairy parlor, which is where you will milk, and they would put up a processing plant, which is where you would do your butter, your cheese, and all those things. So it was slightly not the same as others. So I think that's where the complication became with regard to Friedederi.
But insofar as Estina's role was the implementation of the project, that was something that could have been done by the officials, even if Paras stroke Estina was going to invest in the project. Is that right?
Yes, and yes, Chairperson. However, also the magnitude of the project, I think necessitated the skill that really highly qualified officials or people who would manage that, and looking at the background that we're given around Paras, especially to say is the largest producer in India. You would take it that the skill that they are having is far above the skills that our officials are having. And also with regard to the processing plant that they were going to put up. But I'm mindful, Chairperson, that yes, our officials could still have done it.
But when you give the answer that you have given me, and you say the skills required for the implementation of this project were higher or much higher than the skills that officials of the department had, are you saying that on the basis of a clear knowledge of what skills the department's relevant officials had, or are you just saying that when you look at the project and you think we didn't have officials who had the required skills? In other words, are you saying that having applied your mind to what skills the officials in the department, relevant officials had,
Chairperson, I'm saying this in comparison to what we are told, what is paras, how long they have been in the business, and yeah, if I compare that skill with what the department was having, I presume that they might have better skills than what we had.
Yes, so in other words, your answer is, when you give me that answer, it's not based on you having applied your mind to the skills that the relevant officials of the department had. You look at what was said about paras and you say, probably they had better skills.
Correct, Chair.
Okay.
Chairman, if I might just ask Ms. Dhlamini to reflect on this aspect arising
Yes.
from what you're saying. We've traversed this with other witnesses.
Yes.
We had VKB expert. We have VKB expertise in the country, and there are other organizations like that, agricultural entities that do the kind of work that Paras was invited to come and do. But there's also the issue of whether Parmalat, Dairy Bell, some of these other dairy producers were invited. We've traversed that. And here I'm just dealing with the skills issue that you raise and that the chairman raises in the context of officials, but I'm raising it in the context of using local people as opposed to bringing expertise from outside. So that's just something to reflect on. We'll touch on it very shortly. And then I would like you also just to, when you talk about Estina being a big investor, I will be showing you a document that says just before the first 30 million was paid into their account, they had 16 rand in their bank, 16 rand and some cents in their bank. This all goes back to what you were supposed to interrogate at every level of this project as the CFO, not as the HOD, as the CFO. And these are the kinds of examples that I will be placing before you after lunch. Chairman, I just wanted to give that context.
Yes, thank you. We are going to take the lunch adjournment. The time is 1:20. We'll resume at 2:20. We adjourn.